Okay, Val, my intro video decided not to function, so we are live. Apologies. Well, I don't know. What a start, right? Says browser failed to play the clip. Who knows? Welcome everybody to FSU Coach Live. My name is Tim Baghurst, and I'm joined uh, for this show by Valerie Miyares. Thank you, Val, for joining us. You're the athletic director for Palm County. Explain a little bit about how you got into that position, because it's an unusual one in the U.S.
Yeah, so it's school district of Palm Beach County. We are in South Florida. For anyone that's not familiar with how Florida is, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, then Palm Beach and points north. And so this position, there's about, I want to say close to 30 of our districts in the state of Florida have a district athletic director position. And essentially, you're the director of athletics for the school district, and you work directly with all of the high schools and more than likely the middle schools in your county. And this is just years of being an athletic administrator at the school level and wanting something more, and to elevate. And so this position was created by Palm Beach County Schools about 7 years ago now. And so I applied for that. And so I'm the first one into the position for the county in this role. It started as a manager's position, which is on the administrative track, in the school district, and then fortunately was elevated to director 2 years ago, and I'm really excited about that. This has been an awesome experience. I think when we're involved in athletics, there's a lot of different levels of how you're involved in athletics. Some people like to work with the athletes, some people like to work with the adults, and in this case, it's being like the coach of the athletic directors, the athletic director with the athletic director, and I really enjoy doing that professional development portion with the ADs, and it can be challenging at times because you're not always giving everybody what you want to hear. As we're dealing with eligibility and compliance and certain things like that. So that's a little background on the position. It's something that you find throughout the United States. It's been really great to meet with other people throughout the country who serve in the same role and kind of hear the same trials and tribulations or some of the same success and to learn from them. So this has been a wonderful experience for me here at the district.
Can you talk a little bit about just what you do as a county athletic director? Because again, a lot of states in the U.S. don't have such a position. What's your day to day look like?
So the day to day can change quite often. It just really depends on what's going on. So for us, I have 26 high schools and 36 middle schools. We are the 10th largest school districts in the country. And so, as you can imagine,
Did you say
no
in the
day
country?
in the country, yeah, we're the 10th
Wow.
largest school. And Florida is home to some of the largest. Miami-Dade, I think, is third or fourth. Broward is sixth. Hillsborough is seventh or eighth. We're 10th. Orange County is 12th. So Florida is home to some of the largest districts. And we all of those counties have district athletic director positions, but no day is the same. That's really, you come in with the greatest hopes and dreams. I'm going to come to my office. I'm going to respond to email. I'm going to make a difference. And then, when you arrive, there might be, 10 fires or emergencies. And so, we deal, my day can change from just having interaction with district leadership in the schools. The Florida High School Athletic Association is our governing body, like the NCAA, for athletics at the collegiate level. So we respond to them. And so, today, my night finished with an FHSAA communication. My morning started with an FHSAA communication for an issue with one of our schools. And that's typical that we're constantly going through that rotation on eligibility and compliance pieces. So there's that. And then there's working with all the auxiliary offices here at the district. And so, if we're looking to do district-wide contracts with different vendors, then that usually begins with me and working with our purchasing and our legal departments, risk management and a number of other, groups that we have to work with to get it to go. And then there's the communication with the athletic directors because the schools have needs. And so they all have their own intricacies and their own problems that we have to deal with. And so really I tell a lot of people my day for me, and the work that Valerie Miyares has to do sometimes doesn't start until 4 o'clock in the afternoon because the school day starts at 7:30 or 8 a.m. and then our last high school gets out at 3:30. Our middle schools release even later than that for transportation reasons. And so really you're dealing with the needs of the school in the morning, and then through the afternoon and in the evening, you're trying to catch up on the work that you have to do in your own role. And so I'll just say that again, no day is the same. It's challenging, it's rewarding. Some days are easier than others, some days are better than others. And really this is just a rolling kind of position with with the duties, but it's really rooted in eligibility and compliance for the districts.
Eligibility and compliance is something that rears its ugly head a lot in high school sports in particular. We could also say college as well.
Mm-hmm.
But what are some of the examples of typical issues you might have with athletes trying to become eligible, finding out they're ineligible, etc.?
I would say that the first and foremost one is going to be related to GPA. And so for us, there are basic prongs that the student athletes have to hit to be eligible for athletics. For us, academically, it's a 2.0 unweighted cumulative GPA. And so that's the first piece that I normally get the calls about is a student that has fallen underneath that and what are the options. And there are options for the student athletes, but they're based on a specific timeline for eligibility. So eligibility for us academically turns over at the start of the semester. So what does that mean? That means that our fall athletes, let's take football for instance, football players must be eligible on the first day of the semester. If they're underneath that 2.0, or any of our fall athletes and winter athletes that start in the first semester under that 2.0, they don't have the opportunity to recover grades throughout the first semester to become eligible by their first practice date. They have to be eligible on the first day of the season. Same thing for when we flip our semesters, those spring athletes, our winter athletes that transition, basketball, soccer, wrestling, they also have to maintain eligibility on the first day of the semester. And so it's a lot of conversations about kids that sometimes fall underneath the 2.0 and what accommodations can be given to them. Our GPA threshold is given to us by state statute. It's actually an item that is not able to be appealed with the FHSAA. And so it's really about educating students and families about the importance. I mean, academics are important. It's why we're here, and I think that athletics is, the thing that, the carrot that helps to keep the grades up. So that would be the first piece. The second piece is dealing with a lot of student athlete movements. And, at the NCAA level, you guys have the transfer portal, and people want to refer to that at the high school level as well. We don't have a transfer portal, but we have a lot of kids that do make moves for different reasons. And so eligibility and compliance can fall into a number of different things. When the student moved, where did they move to? Were they a traditional student sitting in a classroom? Have they now gone to home education? Are they in FLVS? Are they in a private school? Are they in a non-member private school? And so with the new House Bill 225 that came out last year and started July 1, a lot of this movement has different allowances now. And so we're walking through different student types and where they move to and can they be eligible or not. It takes a lot of time. You have to get a lot of details. So we deal with that aspect. We deal with kids with addresses, so the high school level has a lot of different things related to compliance. And that's really just scratching the surface. I mean, I could talk for hours about the things that we bump into, but I'd say generally we're dealing with grades, we're dealing with transfers, and we're dealing with where kids zone for and how that affects their eligibility.
One of the more recent discussions, particularly in Florida, but also in other states as well, is the role of NIL in high schools. I imagine that's crossed your desk a time or two. Can you just elaborate a little bit about what's happening in Florida and whether you think this is or is not a good thing?
So this is such an interesting topic because NIL at the high school level for me personally, I think it's a thing that can be scary. And every state is a little bit different. I want to say that we're probably near 30 states in the country that are offering some sort of NIL in some shape or form. We do not have NIL legislation or a policy yet with the FHSAA. I know that it's been worked on.
You said yet.
Yes, yet. So I know that one has been drafted. It's going to be reviewed. again, it may potentially be redrafted. So, for how it would work best. When you look at this as an athletic administrator, there are certain fears related to NIL at the high school level. And for us, it's that our coaches, for the most part, are paid on a supplemental level. And so then we go through the awkward dance of having top players. And let's face it, Florida's got incredible talents, and we're dealing with top players potentially, receiving lucrative NIL deals. And does that create a power shift? This is different than the collegiate level. We're dealing with kids. We're dealing with students that are 13 to 18, 14 to 19. And how does that work for us? I mean, concerns about a poor interaction between a student athlete and a coach, and does it boil down to that outburst of a conversation in the middle of the field or on the court? I make more money than you. I make the decisions. We don't know how that's going to end up. There's also concerns just with in kinds NIL. So let's talk about the student that's invited to have dinner, after a game with their family, at a restaurant. Well, a lot of our students rely on food services, to eat throughout the day. They receive breakfast and lunch. They might receive a pregame, pre-practice, post-game, post-practice meal. And sometimes, on Friday after the game, we don't know if they're getting a chance to eat something on Saturday or Sunday. And so when you think about something just as simple as maybe a student athlete having an opportunity for he and his family to eat at no cost at a local restaurant, what is that going to create in the locker room? What is that going to create? Is that going to incite anything? And so again, I know these are very specific examples, but these are things that have been discussions, with FHSAA. They've been great about it. Conversations about, is a cap necessary? Louisiana has a cap. I want to say it's somewhere around $500 or $1,000 that a student can have an NIL. So there's just so many different thoughts and processes. There's the argument that NIL is a job, and that, that it needs to be separate, but really it shouldn't be separate because it's name, image, likeness, and it's a representation. It's because you're connected to either the Florida High School Athletic Association, a member school, and it really needs to reflect that. So we're going through some of the growing pains of trying to create policy, or the FHSA is going through that, of trying to create policy that is, sound, that's what the kids need, but I think they're really truly trying to make sure that we maintain a decent balance, as well with that. It's very challenging because we want to see that if kids are deserving, we want to make sure that they get what they need, but how do we make sure to keep a certain control over that? And that's difficult. And I wish I had all the answers for it, but it's a very tough thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. And at the same instance, there's almost an inevitability about it, given the fact that, as you alluded to, Florida is very successful at producing athletes. And those athletes may be looking at other states where NIL deals exist to say, well, time for me to move because I don't want to play in Florida anymore because I don't get anything for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry, go ahead, Tim.
No, please.
Well, and I think that we're seeing that just in the college landscape with how students are committing to certain schools, is that there's a lot of different considerations now. And, we've always discussed, anytime we've had the opportunity to talk with college administrators, athletic administrators, or collegiate coaches, is that there is a significant trickle down effect, things, and it's for anything as simple as our student section. I mean, you see during, men's basketball, the Cameron Crazies, I'll just use Duke, and you see how they are, on the sideline and the hands outreach and everything, and that's all emulated at our level. So anything that comes into play, through the professional or through the collegiate ranks is eventually going to reach to us because our kids want to aspire to that. They want to, almost have kind of like a training camp of going through these things so that they're ready, when they get to these next levels, that they can experience that as well. And so, you're spot on with that. Are we going to start losing, students to other states because of that opportunity? I mean, it's most certainly possible.
Okay, we're going to try and take a quick break. We'll see if my video works this time. And if it does, we'll be back in just a minute. The mission of FSU Coach is to prepare and equip the next generation of coaches and sports professionals with best practices and current research to enable them to pursue excellence. We have 2 academic programs, the online graduate certificate, which is 4 classes, and also a 10-class master's in athletic coaching. Our graduate certificate and master's program can be started at any time, either the summer, fall, or spring. All of our classes have the word coach or coaching in them, and they're taught by coaches for coaches.
The types of classes that we offer focus on the athlete as a whole person. We focus on the theory and practice, the research, the helping skills, even some of the mental performance behind what it goes into being an athlete. I came to FSU Coach because I truly believed in the mission and the purpose of the program.
I think I have my dream job being a head coach at Florida State, but I know there's always more ways that I can help my athletes and better prepare as a coach, so I thought joining this master's program would help me learn different ways to attack my job. If you're interested in going into coaching or joining the FSU Coach program, I would just say don't even think about it and do it.
And we're back, everybody. Valerie Miyares is talking to us. If you have a question for her, just put it in your chat box and we'll try and get it to her. I want to move on a little bit because you said something within that high school NIL, and it related to the fact that there may be a change in power structure with coaches and athletes, because all of a sudden athletes may be making more money than their coaches, which seems to be a real problem in Florida. Talk a little bit about Palm County coach pay, coach stipends. Is it good? Is it bad? What can we do about it to help?
So I'm happily would like to share that our superintendent was a huge support. He's a Florida State alumni, by the way, Mike Burke, and just a huge. He finishes every email about the Noles that goes out across. So I love it. And during football season, obviously, it's amped up quite a bit more. So anyhow, fortunately, he was a really large supporter for us in making sure that we started to raise pay. We noticed that we were really deficient with our football coaches and with our athletic directors. We were having significant turnover in those 2 positions. And so, for instance, last year I had 24 athletic directors, 12 of them turned over, and the year before another 12. And so that's a lot. When you're dealing with the leader of the athletic department, having some sort of consistency at that school is a key component. It's just like having a head coach with a student athlete, for consecutive years rather than bringing in somebody new all the time. It's hard to, constantly have to shift and learn new policies and new leadership skills and understanding people. So that was tough for us. So 2 years in a row, we turned over 50% of the room. Football coaches, it was even more. And in some cases, one year we had turned over more football coaches than what we actually had space for. And that's because as one coach left and one was interviewed and accepted, then it turned out that because in Palm Beach, the cost of living is pretty significant, it was hard to make that move and come into the area and be here. And so there was a big discussion, and I wouldn't say a big discussion, it was a quick discussion. School district leadership was right behind it to go ahead and improve these supplements. And so this year, our chief of HR was able to bargain with our CTA group to improve those salaries. And so for now, our football coaches, our athletic directors, I think a number of our other coaches are the highest paid in the state of Florida. So we were able to bring our head football coach supplement to $7,000. So that's $6,000 for them in the fall, and then $1,000 supplement. We have a spring football season at the high school level where they're allowed 20 days in May. And so that also provides payment. Last year and years prior, they would receive a supplement. I think it was around $4,500 or $5,000. 10% of that would be held out, and they would get that paid in the spring. So there really wasn't any extra dollar amount, and really they're doing extra work. And so I felt that there should be an extra spring supplement. And that was one of the things I had pitched to the district, and they had accepted. With the athletic directors, my vision there is that the athletic director is the head coach of the coaches, and we have 3 seasons. We have 3 seasons for the coaches, and therefore the athletic director, that should reflect over those 3 seasons. So the athletic director is receiving a $9,000 supplement.
How much?
9,000. I'm sorry. Yeah, 9,000. So really excited about that. The rest of our sports got rounded up to a whole number, and didn't see quite as big of an increase. But when you look across the state and across the large districts, we were kind of already leading monetarily for those sports. So it's a constant conversation about coaches and what the pay is. We see a different type of pay structure throughout the country. Let's take Texas, for instance, with football, or even Alabama. And there, that's a salaried full-time position. It's usually six figures. It may come with a vehicle, and some other benefits. Here in the state of Florida, in the public sector, it's a supplemented position. So, as a coach, you're on the instructional line. You're a teacher. You're providing on the campus in some other way, and then you have a supplemented position that pays extra on top of it. So that's what we're dealing with here. I feel in Palm Beach County, that we are providing something good. We are trying to show coaches their value and their worth. I know that there's always a desire to have more. I know the state of Florida with Dr. Andrew Ramjet, he has an initiative. I know Coach Norvell, spoke, on their behalf for coaches' pay, football coaches' pay to be increased. It's a constant conversation. When you look at athletics is what helps kids get out of certain situations. And kids that are in great situations, it allows them to go ahead and flourish and move on to another level. They can have their, college athletics paid for. They can be part of the small percentage that gets to play professionally. Athletics is a vehicle for good things, and it should be rewarded for that. But it's not a full-time job, and that's what can make it difficult at times. So it's a constant work in progress, but I feel very confident with where we are, and I always hope for continued improvements.
Yes, to all of it. The challenge is, as you suggested, is that coaches in Palm County, great, they get a higher stipend, but in the grand scheme of things, that stipend doesn't even come close to the amount of time and money they personally invest in the sport. And you mentioned football a lot because it is the main sport that most schools participate in. People come and watch, people talk about. But when we go outside of football, when we talk about the cross-country coach, the tennis coach, those stipends are not as high. And from my perspective as a coach developer, it is very, very difficult to encourage a coach to participate in development that they probably have to pay for when they're not really making anything in the first place. And so we're taking even more of their personal money away. How, if you had the power, maybe FHSAA, maybe legislation, how can we change this? Because other states are doing things differently. How can we change it in Florida where coaching is still a venerated profession? People still respect coaching and coaches, yet underneath the surface, there's very little pay, there's very little training, and a lot of coaches aren't really doing a very good job, which may explain, by the way, that high turnover.
Yes, and those are all excellent points, Tim. And it's so hard to say how we could do this. I have some ideas. I have some thoughts. Whether or not they would gain any traction.
Go for it. I want to hear them.
So, but to me, we're in a situation right now where we are seeing participation on the student athlete level come down some. And I think part of that might be what you spoke to before is the level of coaching, the quality of coaching, that coaches are burnt out. And you and I talk about this all the time, that burnout is real, and that it comes a lot more quickly when you're not being paid well, you're being overworked, you feel that so much is being asked of you, time is being taken away from your personal and your family life. And you're right, at the end of the day, coaches may be receiving a nickel an hour if they're lucky. It might be a nickel a day. This truly is a labor of love. So I'm a huge proponent of continuing education. I think it's important if we can show that coaches are putting effort out, athletic administrators are putting effort out to better themselves. One of my goals with the athletic administrators is I'd like for everybody to become a certified athletic administrator. That's a CAA designation that you get through the national, through the NIAAA, through the National Federation, through USA Football, through, all of our other entities, there's opportunities for certification. I truly feel that, if it's going to be taken seriously with coaching and what coaching does for education, because this is education-based athletics. If it's going to be taken seriously, then it might be time to take a look at it from a collegiate standpoint. And does the head football coach, the head basketball coach, do the head coaches need to have some sort of salary that's different than supplemental because of the risk that they're taking on, because of the amount of students that are involved in their program? When you look at a head football coach that's offering all three levels at varsity, JV, and freshman, it might be 150 student athletes. Sometimes that might be more than the students that are attached to you on a roster for a classroom. And so we have a number of coaches that are dealing with large amounts of kids. But I think if there was a way, to find a way with integrity to pay coaches more, on a salary basis, I think that would be supported. But how do you do it? I mean, other states do it, right? Alabama's doing it, Texas is doing it. But then how do you do that with equality and with equity? Because that might be happening just with the head football coach, but is the women's swim coach receiving the same benefits in those states? I don't have the answer to that. That might be something that I would have to find. So how do you balance that? So for me, I feel if there's going to be a chopping off line, that these coaches will be, removed from a teaching, allocation and strictly be coaching, then we got to have a lot of teeth behind that. I think we need to have things that show why these people are qualified for that, because you're right. Sometimes the pool of talent can be a bit lower. So I want to make sure that people have all the things that they need behind that to earn that. But I think it's a great option. I'm not sure where state legislation will stand on that, because then how do you separate the teacher that's in the classroom from the head football coach and the salary? How do you determine that? There are just so many wild cards that I'm not really, educated enough to say in the HR world or compensation with how you would handle that. But in a Walgreens world, in a world where everything was right, would you love to see some of those head football coaches just simply salary, not head football, but some of the head coaches, through our programs just be salaried for the time that they take with the student athletes and what that equates to? Absolutely. But how does it happen? It may be a simpler answer than we think, like I said, because other states are already incorporating that. So is it a willingness thing? That's that's one of my questions. What is the barrier? And does that question go to Tallahassee? Does that question go to state legislation or our state DOE? Does that question come locally, to our districts? I don't know. And I'm interested to see what Dr. Ramjet is doing and continues to do in that space, with the attempt to improve pay, for the coaches. So I know it's a long-winded and very circular answer, but I'd be interested to see, the type of athlete we have coming in at the high school level is an incredible athlete. I mean, I think even from when I played 20 years ago, we're seeing, I hate to use the cliche of bigger, faster, stronger, but let's face it, these kids are physically, mentally, emotionally really well equipped, and they are doing an outstanding job. And I think that we need to ensure that we're having adults working with them that are qualified, to work with that. So, and that would equal, if you want things better, then you would have to have better compensation for that.
Yes, and it may not be that we give that swim coach a full-time salary for doing something that is not a full-time day.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same instance, if we can get stipends to where people want to do it, because it also comes with a healthy financial package, now the standards can be raised for what's expected of you in that position.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, I've traveled Florida a lot, and some counties are just looking for warm bodies to fill spots because we don't care if you've coached. We don't care if you've coached the sport. We don't have anybody willing to coach. I wonder why not. Well, we don't pay you very much. We expect a lot of you. You're going to get abused by parents and players and fans. And no, but you should do it because you love it.
Yeah.
And we've got this circular thing where coaches come in because they love it and discover that without these other things to support that love, they decide this isn't worth it for me, and they walk away. And when they walk away, we've got to go through the cycle again of bringing somebody in and training them, and hopefully they're good at their job and they don't mess up some kids along the way. And we go through this cycle again. So at some point, I think the system will break, where we will have to consider, do we even offer these sports? Because we just don't have the infrastructure to support them, unless we really, if we're going to venerate this profession, let's have the standards that are required, but let's also reward the people who are meeting those standards. So, I mean, we could talk about this for a long time.
Can I just jump in one just as a follow up? So, just in our short bit of an experiment with our increased supplements in the two positions where we were having high turnover, it's been interesting in the fact that in those two roles, the turnover has diminished greatly. And I think that speaks volumes, to, people being able to provide or feel that they are valued in their time means a lot. And it keeps people in. So I feel greatly, what's the word I'm looking at? Encouraged, by the fact that the improved supplements, for those two particular positions seem to be gaining us some traction. I'm hoping that other people will pick up on that, and that maybe we could see that more statewide. So anyhow, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to follow up that there has been some positivity from that, and like I said, I'm greatly encouraged by that.
Let me ask you from a Palm County perspective. It is interesting that every county has their own rules and stipulations and requirements, and what is and what is not allowed, and how coaches can get training or can't. Do coaches get support to do professional development in Palm County, or is it specifically geared toward teachers? Because I say this because last month I went to a county and spoke to the athletic directors and coaches as part of the professional development day. And the person who organized this sent me a message afterwards. And one of the reports back was, "Thank you so much for doing this. We're never thought about. We never have an opportunity to learn about what we're really passionate about. And this was a big deal for us." Do you provide financial support to go to a clinic, or is it on your own because it's not part of education?
Yeah, so currently professional development is really geared towards the instructional part of the job and being a teacher. Do we have coaches that attend clinics and professional development for their sports? Yes, they do. At the public school level, there can be a lot of different hoops to jump through to get there. And so a lot of times if our coaches want to attend something, they have to go through the process of typically opening up a trust with the school district, and then fundraising money, specifically earmarked for them to have professional development. Because otherwise, all the money that's fundraised for needs to go towards the students. That's how it is at the high school level. So this is a conversation that I've been able to open with our finance department. They are willing to listen, know that it's a pain point. It's something that, been trying to get some movement on over the last year or so, to where we can have coaches more readily accessible, be able to access professional development. Because now, we have some coaches that are taking personal days and might be paying out of pocket for some things. We may have some coaches that understand the process on the finance side of the house here at the district with that trust opportunity and how to navigate that. And then they're able to do it that way, and having what we call a TDE, and have their day covered by their principals. So, we see it varied here. It's certainly a work in progress for us.
How many coaches in your schools aren't teachers?
The number has been lighter than it has been in the past. And so I'm probably going to go ahead and say we're probably around a 50% mark. We rely heavily on community or non-faculty coaches that want to come in and give their time at the end of their workday to be with the kids.
And I can see the disconnect there with the professional development for educators.
Yeah.
And, but you don't teach, so this isn't really relevant to you in any way.
Yeah.
And we don't really have anything else for you. It's a problem in Florida. I mean, 50% is what I hear around the state. It's not uncommon.
Yeah, I think when we sit in our statewide district AD meeting, it's the same conversation. Is that we're teachers, because of the requirements that are set up on teachers in the classroom, and all the thresholds they're trying to reach. I think that they feel that 100% of their energy has to go to that, because that's their 9 to 5, and they need to make sure that they're coming good. I think it kind of, I don't want to say scares, but people are concerned with taking time away from that to contribute, to an after school activity, and one such as athletics, where it's not just practicing, after school from 3 to 5 p.m. I mean, you're on a bus, you're having to get transportation. Sometimes you're traveling for hours, you're playing, you're dealing with parents, you're dealing with officials. There's a big part of this. It's an entire second job. And so, I think at times that can become very challenging for teachers to want to jump in on. I remember when I had a table at our new teacher orientation, where they did a full day, and people would stop by and they'd say, oh, I said, oh, this is athletics. Are you interested in coaching? The amount of people that didn't even say anything to me and just walked away just really blew my mind. And when I found that, like, I had to get up and walk around and talk to people and say, no, listen, like, this is how we educate kids outside the four walls of the classroom. Here are our life lessons. Here are the opportunities to reach students beyond arithmetic, reading, and English. And if you're an educator and you have a background, or if you played athletics, or if you love athletics, this is the spot for you. And so if you can feel it in my voice, like, I hate to use the word begging, but you're trying to persuade people so deeply that taking the time after school is a quality effort, and that there will be such rewards for you as an adult, and what you leave with those kids, and to please consider it, and it's just an interesting conversation we have to have. But yeah, the number of people that were just oh no, don't want to deal with the parents, oh no, don't want to.
I wonder how many of them might have continued their conversation if you said, and there's a $20,000 stipend attached.
It's so true. It's so true. Well, when we look at, at times there can be supplements for teachers, through different things where they might receive an extra $10,000 to be back in the classroom. A lot of times, sometimes you see people, leaving from positions that might be at the central office or at the district level and going back in. So to your point, that's a big draw. It's a huge draw. $20,000. I mean, we're talking about a big clip of money there, and I think that is substantial, and really would start drawing the right amount of talent and a number of applicants into these positions. At years before, we'll say for head football coach, if I had an opening, I'd receive 75 applications. I'd receive 75 resumes minimum, and you would divide those out, between in-state and out-of-state. Now, with some of our schools, some schools are lucky if they get 10. And it's tough. It's really difficult. So I agree with you 100%. $20,000 supplement. I think that would be of great interest to people.
Yeah. Last question. I want to be respectful of your time, and that is encouraging coach development, coach training, coach education, because the argument is here from an athletic director's point of view, if you can get coaches better trained, that's less work for you, less drama for you, less stress for everybody. I've been in situations where coaches have been required to obtain professional development, state mandated. And I've watched people being pushed into the auditorium against their will, because if you don't get this, we can't give you your certificate. So you have to sit in here. How do we encourage coaches to not only get more training to become better at what they do, but also ensure that they get it? Because if I go and talk at let's say a countywide professional development day, those coaches and athletic directors choose where they go and what they listen to. And they can choose not to listen to anything that I say. Hopefully they do. But the reality is that the ones who want to learn are the ones who choose to come. And the ones who need it most are the ones who find ways to get out of it or not come. how do we encourage more people to want to get trained? And how do we ensure that those who don't still get the training so that we don't have those problems with them down the road?
Yeah, I mean, isn't this just a trend that we see throughout different parts of life? You think about the parent-teacher conference, and it's always the kid with straight A's that the parent shows up, but it's
Yeah.
the struggling students that we don't have the ability to reach. And so in this case, it's coaches that have a desire to get better and to want to be ingrained in the newest, greatest, and latest. They want to be part of that, but how do we get coaches to receive quality instruction and quality professional development on a regular basis? And really, I think, and people are probably not going to like me for saying this, but we have coach certifications through the Department of Education that lasts for 5 years. And really, for coaches, there's no requirements such as with like my teaching certificate, I have to do 120 or 130 credit hours over my 5 years so that I can renew that. But with coaches, it's simply paying the fee and then just having the professional certificate turned back over again for another 5 years. And so to me, if we want to be really serious about ensuring that coaches are professionally developed at a quality level or at a level that everybody equally has to reach, then it is going to be putting in hours of work that is going to be required for those coaches, to be able to be, in class and a course and getting taught, the right way. And that can range, maybe you went to, the Nike Coaches Clinic, maybe, you went to USA Volleyball, maybe you did some different things. You can get so many hours for those experiences, but there should be hours that are purely dedicated to an actual, scholastic aptitude for coaching.
But athletic directors, when I agree with you 100%. I think all of us in every profession should be continuing our professionalism, our training. When I mention this to athletic directors, the response is, if I did that, I wouldn't have enough coaches because they would quit.
And that is a constant answer that you're going to get from most ADs with any new barrier that comes into place. So, we now have to get fingerprint. Let's just say it's not the case, but we're going to have to fingerprint every year. That's not the case. But I'm saying if that were to come in, well, we're going to have a ton of coaches leave because they're not going to want to fingerprint on you. So it's like no matter what you throw at people, that's always the constant response. But we can't consistently and constantly talk about a problem and then look away at potential resolutions. We have to eventually bite onto the resolution, buy in, and we need to produce that. If there's a problem, we gotta find a way to solve it, and that's the bottom line. And so if you constantly rebut and reject that, well, then you're part of the problem. You can't sit here and constantly complain about the turnover, the lack of applicants, the lack of knowledge and understanding, and yet in the same breath be completely against the idea of having some sort of required professional development for folks. They just don't jive together. Quality coaches don't just come out of thin air. It's rare that somebody is just ready to roll and is excellent on their game. Everybody needs to have some sort of guidance and some sort of education. And so, ADs, we can be part of the problem at times, but part of that is that you don't want to scare off who you have. And yes, that's a real problem. But back to the start of our conversation, with improved benefits and improved compensation, would we be in that situation where we'd be concerned with scaring off coaches? Maybe not. They might, if they're being, paid and valued, at the proper rate, then potentially this would just be embraced as part of my job function, and that would be it. So I'm hoping that the mentality will change on that. But, right now, if you don't mind me using this platform, anyone that loves athletics, please consider your local high school or middle school to give back and work with the student athletes. I guarantee you it will probably do more for you than even the kids on the court or on the field or in the pool. Consider giving back to education-based athletics and to continue growing our 9th through 12th graders and our 6th through 8th graders to make it to the next level. So, Tim, thanks for letting me just kind of plug that for a second.
Oh, no, of course. I agree completely. If somebody wants to reach out to you, probably watching this after the fact, maybe listening to our podcast, what's the best way for them to do that?
They're welcome to drop me an email. That's going to be the best way to get me. And so it's up on the screen, and I'll try to respond as quickly as I can, depending on how the day is going.
And for those listening to the podcast, that's Valerie.Miyares at palmbeachschools.org. Well, Val, thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your time and wisdom with us. I really enjoyed the conversation. I knew I would. I'm sure we'll continue it for many, many occasions in the future. But on behalf of myself, Tim Baghurst, and of course, Val Miyares, thanks so much for watching.
Go Noles.